Chapter 1. The Serpent Awakens. The desert was not always silent. Once it whispered secrets in the language of the gods. The wind carried them across dunes of gold, through valleys where the earth itself remembered. And in the heart of this forgotten land, beneath the gaze of a sun that burned with the fury of Ra, something stirred. Apep, the serpent of chaos, had slept for eons. His coils, vast as the horizon, lay cold in the abyss, his breath, a slow, rhythmic pulse that shook the foundations of the world. But now the earth trembled, the sand shifted, the stars above flickered as if in warning. The priests of Neith, goddess of war and weaver of fate, had seen the omens. Their sacred texts spoke of this moment, the awakening of the serpent, the unraveling of order. In the temple of Dendor, the high priestess knelt before the sacred loom, her fingers tracing the threads of destiny. The pattern was changing, the threads were fraying. Neith, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of the earth. The serpent stirs. Beyond the temple, the Nile ran black with silt, its waters churning as if something vast and ancient moved beneath its surface. The crocodiles, sacred to soak, hissed and thrashed, their scales glistening like armor in the dying light. The birds of the sky fell silent. Even the jackals, who usually prowled the dunes at night, had vanished into the shadows. In the city of Memphis, the pharaoh stood upon the highest terrace of his palace, his golden headdress catching the last rays of the sun. His advisors spoke in hushed tones, their voices laced with fear. The serpent awakens, they murmured. The balance is broken. The pharaoh clenched his fists. Neith will not abandon us, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The goddess of war had been silent for centuries. Her temples stood empty, her priests scattered. The people had turned to other gods, to Ra and Osiris, to Isis and Horus. But Neith was the weaver. She was the one who held the threads of fate. And now fate was unraveling. Deep beneath the sands, Apep's eyes opened. They were pits of darkness, vast and endless, swallowing the light. His scales, black as the void between stars, shifted as he stretched, his body coiling and uncoiling like a storm gathering strength. The earth groaned beneath his weight. The sky darkened as if the sun itself feared to look upon him. The first tremors reached the surface. The people of Egypt fell to their knees, their prayers rising like smoke into the air. The priests of Neith gathered in the temple, their voices chanting the ancient hymns, their hands clutching the sacred symbols of the goddess. They knew what was coming. They had read the signs. The serpent was rising, and with him the war that had been forgotten. The pharaoh's advisors urged him to flee, to take refuge in the mountains, to hide from the coming storm. But the pharaoh stood firm. If Neith is to fight, then we will stand with her, he declared. We will not cower in the face of chaos. The wind howled through the streets of Memphis, carrying with it the scent of burning incense and the distant roar of the serpent's voice. The people huddled in their homes, their eyes wide with terror. The children clutched their mothers, their small hands trembling. The elders whispered of the old days, of the time when the gods walked among men. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the wind stilled. The earth fell silent. The serpent's voice faded into the distance, as if he had retreated once more into the depths. But the priests of Neith knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The serpent had awakened. And now the war would begin anew. The pharaoh turned to his advisors, his face grim. Send word to the temples, he commanded. Gather the priests, prepare the sacrifices. Neith must be called upon. The advisors bowed, their robes rustling like the wings of vultures. They knew the cost of such a summoning. They knew the price of war. But they also knew that if they did not act, the serpent would rise again. And next time he would not retreat. The night was long, and the stars burned cold above the desert. The wind carried the scent of sand and blood, of ancient promises and forgotten oaths. The people of Egypt waited, their hearts heavy with dread, for the serpent had awakened, and the war was about to begin.